Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about jokes. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, I made a bad joke at work and now I might lose my job. What should I do? Well, this is a tricky one because unfortunately you might be working in a company where there is or a country or a region where there are laws about what you can say and what you cannot say in a professional environment. And if you have made a mistake in your company, the only thing you can really do here is, well, of course you need to know the laws. You should, if you have a union or something like that, you should because usually, well, it depends on your region, of course, but there's usually some type of information where they show you proof of what you did or whatever, and so you might be able to do something there. So go and make sure that you know your stuff in terms of what the company can and cannot do, and then, well, apologize and try to be very humble and transparent and make it damn clear that you understand that you hurt someone or that you offended somebody, and try to play it from there. Even if you don't necessarily feel that way, it is unfortunately the way that it works is that usually it is the offendee that determines whether or not a joke was appropriate. In other words, the person who was damaged by the comment or whatever you did is the person who's going to ultimately decide whether or not. Well, that's not technically true. It's a sentiment that we use in PC culture, that the one who gets offended is the one who decides whether or not the joke was funny. But the real answer is, well, that is true from a completely philosophical perspective, but the real answer is that your boss determines if the joke was funny or not, or rather, if the thing that you did warrants drastic action, or, well, not drastic action, but if they're going to fire you over it or not. And this is the way it works. This is why it's extremely hard, I think, for a lot of people to adjust to. And, well, some people really do this well. You put on the corporate mask or you put on the professional mask or whatever, where you really, really need to play the role of. Well, some people are this way, and some people are not. But in many cases, the issue with being in a professional environment or being in an environment like this is that you don't control the people that are around you, or you can't be certain of how much you can trust them. And when I say trust, I don't mean that your coworkers are going to stab you in the back. I'm saying that if you do something or say something that goes over poorly with them, even if you think that it's the most normal thing in the world, they do have you run the risk of them getting offended and going to your boss behind your back. And I've seen this happen many times. You might be the sort of person who wants to talk it through and will go and talk to the person and say, hey dude, I felt that we should talk about this, it wasn't really okay. And then that's the end of it. But just because you might be that person, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. They might go directly to your manager, and your manager, depending on how they react, is going to do something about it, or they might not do something about it. It's a complicated situation. It's sort of, well, in many ways, even if you know these coworkers fairly well, they can do this at practically any moment. And if you're, depending on your region, there might actually be things that the company needs to do legally, which is a problem. So you really have to think about. I would say this. This is so sad. I think it is really sad because you really have to pick the context where you speak to people. Uh, in many ways, in a similar fashion to how you adjust your behavior depending on, of course, your relationship with these people. When you talk to, say, your best friend, or when you talk with, I don't know, your mother-in-law or your father-in-law or your mother or your father, like you adjust based on who you're talking to, because you know that you might be very brutish or like politically incorrect with one person and like have a lot of fun because you're that way, and then if you do the same thing with somebody else, it's going to come back and bite you. And this is the same sort of thing. So what I really suggest that you do here is, as I said, simply apologize and accept that somebody was offended. It doesn't really matter how you think about it, because at the end of the day, uh, well, if they have decided that they were offended and the company or your manager they have decided that they're going to back you on this thing, then all you can really do is to apologize, I would say. And then in the future, and tell them basically that in the future you're going to try to adjust this behavior, and in some cases they might make you go through sensitivity training, or they might make you go through communication training, and just kind of comply, just bend over and let it happen. And then try to remember the next time you feel like you're in a joking mode that even if, and this is the unfair part about it, even if the person who was offended at this point, like they're the one who's joking all the time, two wrongs doesn't make a right. It doesn't matter. Well, you can of course point that out to your manager and hope that they will listen, because as I said, it doesn't matter what the person said, it matters what the manager is saying. And if you can, you could, if this other person is like just as horrible at this thing as you are, you can of course state, and I say that I just thought that because we do joke around quite often, that whatever is true for this other person is true for me as well. You can go down that route as well. It's up to you if you think that that's feasible. And if that's not feasible, well, then either you just allow this unfair situation where they might make jokes that are inappropriate, and because you are a more solid or like mature or stronger person, you don't really bother so much with reporting them, or the next time they do it, you can report them in return, and you can create this little nice mudslinging situation. It's up to you how you want to deal with it, but right this at this exact moment, that's not your situation. Your situation is that you're the one who's in the hot seat. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you say something that is inappropriate in a place of work, and your manager, your boss, decides to back the person who was offended by the thing that you said, it doesn't really matter how silly you thought that the slight was, because this can literally happen at any moment. And unfortunately, it's getting increasingly common that PC culture and communication between different types of people with different value systems causes this sort of friction and can cause these sorts of issues. And right now, it is the trend that the offendee is the person who is in the right, usually, where the company will back whoever, in most cases, whoever was offended by whatever you said. So the best thing for you is to simply apologize and say that this is never going to happen again, and then try to just play out the situation as best as you can. Um, and it doesn't really matter how you feel about it, because that's the best move for you, unless you of course want to fight them on it and like make a big deal out of it, but then you might actually lose the job, and that may matter, it may not matter, depending on your principles and position in life, but usually this is the way it goes. And then in the future, if you see other people like display this behavior, you have to make the decision for yourself. Are you going to be the sort of person who handles it in a different way, or are you going to start doing the same thing and start reporting people to your manager? And then I leave it to you to decide what is the best course of action here. Have a great day.